and over the moon.
Welcome to the Landing Strip with Nick Lynham and Mikey Garcia, presented by From Financial.
Welcome back to the Landing Strip. After an exciting one to end the homestand, I don't know if I've watched a hockey game quite like that in some time. An absolute must lose or absolute must win, depending on which side of this late season run you're on. And we see probably their best complete effort outside the first 10 minutes on this homestead. They lose this one 4-3 in a shootout. They end the homestand 5-2-1. But the Nashville Predators gain a point on them this night in a huge one. A lot of fun, a lot of good stuff to talk about on a night where they get what I would call their second best possible result on the old scoreboard. Was a bit of a 3-point swing with the late tire from Johnny Taves with the net empty. We're going to get into all of that. Mikey, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. That was quite the game that the Jets put on for us during this ethical tank run. And since that is what's going on right now, I think we'll have to kind of sit back, clear our lungs out and sing along with our tank song. So let's go.
Let's do it.
Stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop. It'll soon be here.
Yes, it will soon be here. Every game that goes by, that draft is creeping closer and closer. And like you said, the Nashville Predators stay ahead of the Winnipeg Jets in terms of their draft positioning. And that's what really this game is about today. This game is about draft positioning, where they're going to finish the season when those lottery balls start rolling down. And luckily for the Jets, they stayed below the Nashville Predators.
Yes, the Jets bring themselves within closing distance to getting that spot with a 2-point deficit, and they do have one extra regulation win on the Predators. They put together a great effort, but let's start with the Tank Awards, because they did drop this game. They did drop a point and a chance to leapfrog Nashville here. Who is your tank commander in the Winnipeg Jets versus Nashville Predators game? Let us know in the chat. Mikey, who's yours?
Mr. 870 save percentage. I'm going to have to give it up to I'm going to do it. Maybe all the goals weren't going to be on Connor Hellebuck, but on a night where the Jets put up the amount of shots that they put up, actually found a few goals, you would have hoped that if you're, begging for a playoff spot, that your all-world gold medal Vezina Hart Trophy winning goaltender would have stolen a goal that normally, a regular goalie might not have had a chance on. So 870 save percentage isn't going to be good enough if you are still one of those people who think the playoffs are a real thing. So I'm going to give it to Helly tonight, 870.
Which one did you want him to have?
Ooh, that's a good question. Like I said, it's you maybe can't put them the last one, maybe.
Okay.
The last one. Honestly, yeah, I'm going to say the last goal there.
You're not alone. The chat, Jets Empire, says Connor hella suck is his. And Rylan Medwick also said Helly with the hands covering the eyes.
Yep.
Late G's Tank Award is once again the second best goalie on the ice. Funny how often that has happened this year. He goes away. I want to go with mine. Al Camino goes the anti-tank award to the broken stick. Stamkos breaks his stick in the last minute of there, goes to the bench, becomes a 6-on-4. Mark Scheifele finds John Taves. And with a minute left, the Jets tie this to send this to overtime. Colin Hall's tank commander is Hayden Fleury for being the only guy negative in the fantasy stats today, and negative by a moonshot to boot.
Hey,
it is funny to see.
He scored a sick goal with that tip in, man. That was really nice. That first Nashville goal when Fleury tipped it in. Whew.
Some more tank commander stuff. Frosty Winnipeg says the easiest homestand of any NHL club this season has ended as a 5-2-1. And normally, you might appreciate that record, but where the Jets find themselves, not so well. Real DFV's tank commander is Hellebuck. Feast or famine and no snacking at the Hella Burgers. Tony Valeri calls out JMO, played that puck really poorly on the third goal. That leads to the Matthew Wood short side snipe.
Yep.
I'm going. It's on the same topic of goaltending. It's got to be UC Saros. With how much offense the Jets generated, what a treat to watch that game behind Saros tonight for 2 periods, where my seats are. That guy looked absolutely dialed, and it takes outside the Dave's play. Leslie, sorry. It takes some pretty good efforts. Connor finds Perfetti in the slot, who gets a shot off. Vilardi's there backdoor. Hey, Leslie. Vilardi's there backdoor to put it away. We see a great, right in the last minute of the first period, Josh Morrissey gets the dump in. A great effort from Kyle Connor to be first on the forecheck. Pokes it to Gabe Vilardi, who was the second man on the forecheck. And Josh Morrissey finds his way all alone in the slot. But UC Saros came up big time and time and time again. He gets Mark Scheifele a few times, tracking the one-timers cross ice. He gets Cole Perfetti a few times. Brad Lambert, towards the end of the third, he comes up with a monster save. I think the tank commander is UC Saros stealing an extra point for the Nashville Predators tonight.
Absolutely. Over on Facebook, Mike Orvis says that goal from Wood was dog shit. Hellebuck went down way too early. So there's his
and he does get beat
commander.
short side twice.
Yep.
I thought that was a great shot.
That was a great shot. It was a great shot as well. You got to give Wood credit for that one.
Mm-hmm. I see the chat is talking about a guy that, hey, if we continue to slide a bit, there's a center prospect I want to talk about today. And Rylan Medwick and Colin Hull are going there already. We'll get into some of that. But I want to get into this game here because there was a lot to like from it. And for me, being in house today, another absolute treat. And again, at 5-on-5, their most used pairing. The things I was seeing from Dylan Sandberg and Elias Salomonson today were really special. And there's a couple sequences I want to get into. But for as much as they've struggled to develop offensive talent in Winnipeg, the way some of these D curves are going, especially with Sandberg and Salomonson in the last few years, a big credit. Would you see from the Jets' top pairing at 5-on-5 again here tonight with the last change, Rich Nashville?
Yeah, 2 games in a row now. We were wondering if this was going to be, the future for the Winnipeg Jets. Well, the future might be now. This might be just, here we go. He's a full-time NHLer now. He's full-time on the top pairing. This is it. No, it was good to see again the continued progression from them. This is a very steady pairing, right? This is going to be a pairing that, especially once Salomonson gets his full-time, schedule going and everything like that, and becomes more and more comfortable. The mistakes, any little, hiccups will definitely start to get filtered out, right? So this is it's interesting to watch with Neil Pionk's return kind of on the horizon where this shakes out the rest of the roster. Do they continue on together to, have this progression that we've seen and let them keep building chemistry? Or are they going to, kind of shake things up at that point, drop Salo down to the third and have Pionk slide right back in alongside Sandberg? It's going to be interesting to see how they manage the minutes going forward here because each game Salo's looked a little bit better. They've given him more responsibility. He's taken on power play responsibility. He's out there at the end of games. It's going the way that you wanted to, the way that, progression and development, quote unquote, should be happening for your, potentially, hopefully number 1 pairing defenseman. So he looks good. He looks like he belongs. And I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Salomonson because if the progression stays on this type of path, you've got a player there, man.
Yeah, we do see him gaining more and more credibility with the coaching staff. And I think you see it on the ice too. The Jets core guys aren't shy to get the puck to him quickly in transition. He's clearly building trust in this org. And we see him before Taves gets out there with the odd man with the net empty. Salomonson goes first for that first draw. Gets a shot through. Saros has to make a big save off the rebound. We see him taking 3v3 minutes in overtime. We're seeing him playing penalty kill. And today, at 5-on-5, the duo together, 16:41, a 72.5% expected goals percentage, and they gave up the least amount in their own zone of any pair tonight. I wanted to shout out Sandberg, though, on this night, because there was one shift in particular. There's a couple of moments I want to shout out, though. But when we were talking about the ascent of Sandberg last year, one of the names we were kind of saying was Jacob Slavin Light. And the first shift, I want to say it's in the second period, he gets out there for a D-zone shift with the top line, and he comes across to the right side, makes a block with his right foot, then gets back to the net front, strips Nashville of the puck, leads the rush the other way, gets it in deep, is the first guy on the forward track to break it up, and you see the top line then generate a quality shift right at the beginning of the period. It's those type of shifts that a number one D-man could take over. Even if it doesn't lead to a goal there, he did all the little things to give the Jets' best offensive players a real quality look in the O-zone. We see him a couple times. Philip Forsberg takes a couple penalties tonight, but he's someone I really enjoy watching play the game off the wing. And he's really good at suckering guys in for that reverse hit, spinning off of them and driving the net out of the corner. He tries to do it to Sandberg. Sandberg doesn't bite, strips him of the puck. We're going the other way. He is just so effective with controlling the house, using both his body and his stick. Watching tonight was one of those nights, despite the losing effort, when we're looking forward with the Winnipeg Jets. Dylan Sandberg and Elias Salomonsson together are really looking like something special, looking like a D pair that you can get excited about. And I saw Murat had done an article today on, he talked to Scott Wheeler and what's his name, Pronman, scouting out the best fits for the Winnipeg Jets in this draft. And I found it interesting. Chase Reed was number 2 behind Gavin McKenna.
Interesting.
And the idea was Salmonson eventually being Morrissey's partner, Reed being Sandberg's partner. And I got to say, that got me a little excited to start thinking about. But this duo together right now is something to watch. Tonight was one of those nights. It's hard to get excited about, like, I know fans get excited about big point numbers, nice goals and stuff. What I saw from that pair to carry the game was something, one of those exciting nights when you look forward to where can go into the future.
100% agree. It gives you that hope, right? That's what we've talked about earlier in the year. You can sell wins or you can sell hope. Salomonsson is exactly what they should be selling in terms of hope. Look at this progression. Look at the way that he's able to, be in there on that top pairing, playing that pairing, playing the most amount of minutes at 5-on-5 together. It's everything that you want, right? That should be the win that they're pointing to.
So, a couple people go there in the chat. Let's address it. You touched on it briefly. Rylan Medwick says, begs the question, what the hell do they do when Pionk is back? He's skating with a non-contact jersey. And Jamal McFlurry. Might have to order one of those after. We'll be surprised when Pionk is back. Will we be surprised when he's back on the second pair? What do you think happens in the next week or two here when Neil Pionk comes back? What does the top 4 shake out for the Winnipeg Jets here?
Well, there's the way they should do things and the way that they probably will do things. You kind of have to put Pionk back with Dylan Sandberg. We've seen that Pionk with almost any other partner, the chaos gets real bad, right? The mess gets real messy. He's able to do the fun offensive things that he did last year in his contract season because he had Dylan Sandberg cleaning up the mess behind him. Anytime that the two of them are not playing together, generally because of Sandberg's, if he's been injured or whatever, the results just aren't there for Pionk. It doesn't work. It becomes absolute chaos. We've seen him play with Fleury a few times where it's just an absolute shit show. So you almost have to put him back with Sandberg to just make him a functional player. But that sucks because I don't want to be taking him away from Salomonsson, who is really showing some chemistry with him. The other option would be to saddle Josh Morrissey with him, but I think you only do that if you're trying to push Josh Morrissey into asking for a trade. So that doesn't seem like a good idea.
Not necessarily.
Right? And then the other option is on the third pairing with Hayden Fleury, and we've seen that many a times, and it sucks. It's not fun. So I don't know. I really don't know what they should do. I know what they're going to do, and that's put Pionk alongside Dylan Sandberg because that's the only way he works. But if I don't know what else you're supposed to do with him. Pionk's this, boat anchor of a pain in the ass that has, one or two ways that he's only useful. and we're going to pay him a crap load of money to keep doing it for the next bajillion years. It's funny that you mentioned Forsberg and Pionk. Forsberg could have been a Winnipeg Jet way back in the day,
Trouba
right?
draft.
At the 2012 draft. Jacob Trouba's who we took instead of him there. Jacob Trouba, who we traded for Neil Pionk in a first-round pick, who turns out to be Ville Heinola. So essentially, we've traded Jacob Trouba for a boat anchor who is a pain in the ass to find a spot for in the lineup, and an UFA that we walked to early UFA because we didn't know how to manage his games. So I don't know. I think that Jacob Trouba trade might need to get revisited one day in the future. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we do with it because I guess you could play Salo with Morrissey. Like that's not a bad spot by any stretch. It's a great partner for him to still have. I just hate breaking up the chemistry that they've already built with Salo and Sandberg to start.
Yeah, I think that's where this is going, is Salo with Morrissey. Clearly, he's earning the trust of the coaching staff. I mean, it's only a few weeks ago we were seeing DeMello out there for 3-on-3 shifts with John Taves. And was it Goose?
Nyquist it was, yep.
Yeah, so you're seeing Salo's getting thrown out there in more and more situations. What I would bet happens here is Salo with Morrissey, Pionk with Sandberg, and DeMello likely with Fleury. At the end of the day, the rest of this year, I'm open to experimentation. I know we saw Barron between Perfetti and Vilardi, and I know you want to get to that quote.
Yeah.
I'm down to see different things here. For me, 15 games left. I want to see different things tried.
Yep.
Here's an interesting scenario for you, though, and I do think could work around the Morrissey-Pionk thing. If you trust Sandberg and Salo, and we know Sandberg's the shutdown D pair for this team, and they're logging now a couple games in a row, the most minutes at 5-on-5 as a pair. If that's your shutdown pair, you can let Josh Morrissey out loose a little bit more with the top line with a Neil Pionk for ozone shifts. And it could work. It's a different way to look at it.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, the last 15 games, let's experiment. Let's find things out.
Yeah, experimenting is what they should be doing right now. They won't, but it's what they definitely should be doing.
Rihanna asks, Nick, are you wearing your Tank Commander jersey? Did you wear it to the game? I'm wearing it on the show tonight, but I did not wear it to the game. Do you want to go to the Morgan Barron question?
Yeah.
I thought this was another strong game from the fourth line tonight. Probably Brad Lambert's best. Let's talk about the fourth line, and then we'll get into the Morgan Barron post-game question. What'd you see from Brad Lambert? Morgan Barron gets a shift in 3-on-3, 2 actually. First one, he creates a turnover the other way using that speed. What'd you see from the fourth line? What'd you see from Barron, Brad Lambert, Koepke, who I thought was an injury bug tonight? And then we'll get into that quote that you wanted to talk about from Scott Arniel on Morgan Barron.
Yeah, this current configuration of the fourth line of Koepke, Barron, and Lambert has had more good games than bad games recently. You can really kind of point to only a handful, 1 or 2 games here and there where they've been kind of a negative on the ice. And tonight was one of the positives again. They, like you said, Koepke was an absolute energy bug. Barron, the skating was on full display tonight. And Lambert actually looked really good with the puck on his stick. This is the type of fourth line that, you should get excited about if you're, if you were a playoff team. Because you'd have, I'd be more than excited to see those guys go out and try to, shake things up a little bit and get some energy going, especially post special teams, right? In a game that has a lot of special teams going on, you want your fourth line to give your the rest of your lineup a break, right? Catch their breath. So yeah, I thought they were really good again tonight. And like you said, Lambert as well stood out.
Yeah, I thought this was Brad Lambert's best game since coming up. You saw the speed on full display. There's one sequence, Salo's coming up with it. He draws the check and he just dumps it off for a streaking Lambert, who ends up getting it to the middle for, I think it was Morgan Barron for a shot on net.
Yeah.
You see Brad Lambert a couple times. Clearly the speed plays up at this level. You're seeing him beat defenders wide. My biggest question here is can he use that and get to the middle of the ice? We saw a couple times today where he has the defender beat and then he takes that low angle shot below the circle. And you're not going to beat much NHL goaltenders with that. I thought his speed and his ability to create stood out today the most I've seen so far. That is the biggest question for me, though, is he able to get to the middle of the ice using that speed to get to those harder areas to create some looks?
Yeah, that's going to be a confidence thing, I think, right? He's going to need to start believing that he can actually pull that off. And then he needs to start attempting it and not be afraid that if he does it and it doesn't work out, that he's going to be, enjoying popcorn in the press box. So it's, can he do it? He's probably got the skill set to do it, right? It just, does he have the confidence to try it? And does he have the backing to know that if he does attempt something like that, but the puck doesn't come with him, that he's not going to be riding the pine?
Some thoughts over in the chat on Lambo, and then we'll keep it moving. As Victoria sends a pretty funny one I wanted to touch on. Rihanna says, the fourth line has been cooking pre-deadline and still carries on post. Like, yes, baby, yes. They bring a fun brand, right? For a team that's been lacking that speed and ability. You're seeing it from them shift over shift. Gayla Boss says, Lambo is showing some decent traits and that we won't hurt you while he learns in the NHL. Or some decent change and that he won't hurt you while he learns the game in the NHL. First thing to learn, do something more dangerous than tight angle shots on the wing. Exactly what I saw here tonight, too. Rain says, I want to see Lambo get some 3-on-3 action once the Jets slowly fade out of the race. That's his bread and butter when he's got space to use those hands. Something I wouldn't mind seeing, as Ecker says, agreed with Rain. Wouldn't mind seeing with Rosane, who got another couple looks today and continues to build on his game in Winnipeg. We see Morgan Barron take a shift up the middle with Cole Perfetti and Gabe Vilardi. I know a lot of our listeners, even when I wasn't listening to it as much, now I want, like I said, experimentation, I'm all in on. But I know it was a common thing in our chat room. A lot of people I've talked to wanted to see this trio, and it was Cole Perfetti, Morgan Barron, Gabe Vilardi. We see a moment of it. As real DFE says, flip Barron and Larry. Is that something we're going to see more of, or did Scott O'Neill poo-poo that one in the post game today?
Look, we all love Morgan Barron here. We've gone over quite a bit the things he does well, the things that are lacking in his game as well. But we've really been able to see the things that he does well, and maybe where he might fit on a line with those guys. Playing a bit of an elevated role. And in the we saw it for a shift today, so he was being rewarded. And Scott O'Neill in the post game was asked about it. He was asked, Morgan Barron's done such a great job lately. He's been skating well, producing. Was his, move up to the second line today for that shift, was that a reward for his really good play as of late? And Scott O'Neill, bless his heart, as he does every single time something like this happens, throws all the cold water on it and says, no, Lowry's skate broke. That's it. Lowry's skate broke. That's why he took a shift with those guys. It was not a reward. It's not because Scott O'Neill sees what we all see and wants to get Barron elevated minutes and thinks that there's something that no, Lowry's skate broke. That's it. So just as a PSA to everybody watching the games, next time that you see, Barron up with those guys, it's going to be either a face-off like last game or someone's skate is broken. Any type of change like that you see, the tweet that you have written up of, oh my God, we've got so-and-so up in the top 6 with so-and-so. Hey, just put it in your drafts for like 80 seconds. Just count to like 80 or 90. Throw it in your drafts because you'll get to delete it then instead of the apology tweet after.
Over in the chat, Colin Hall wants to see Barron and Lowry flipped and play the two kids with Lowry, as in Rosane and Lambert. That's an interesting look I wouldn't mind seeing.
Absolutely, yeah.
T-Will says Barron, future Jets captain. Jets Pope says Big Morgan, Barron, defender. Frosty Winnipeg, Captain Morgan, raise your knee. I'll say this. As I will continue to reiterate here. All for experimentation. But the funny thing about this whole Barron-Lowry swap, I think Lowry and Perfetti have really found something together here in the second half of the season. Like, I was sitting there watching today, and if you're trying to mold a contending team, you want the Winnipeg Jets to win a cup. The Sandberg and Salo pairing got me excited about that kind of idea, especially when you have Josh Morrissey as well in that trio. That trio might develop into a bit of a underrated group league-wide, given how they do their business. So you can get me excited about that. Despite the season not being the heart level, you can get me excited about Connor Hellebuyck. Watching today, the fourth line, as a fourth line out contender, you can get me buying in on that, actually. You can get me buying in on Barron, Koepke, and Lambert being a change of pace fourth line for a Winnipeg Jets team that's contending. You know what you could really sell me on? Cole Perfetti and Adam Lowry being that key middle six, likely third line of a contender as well. I like what they've developed. They really need a shooter on that line. I thought you saw in this game where they get in on the forecheck, they really stir things up, and then they'd get to the slot, and you just know the shooting talent isn't going to win out, especially on a net like this against UC Saros, who's locked in. I have all the time in the world for Cole Perfetti and Adam Lowry together, if I'm being honest here.
Yeah, that's a pairing we've liked to have seen for a while. The fact that we've got a speedy winger who's kind of a shooter on a different line is neither here nor there, but that is a nice combo to start with, right? With Lowry and Perfetti. And like you said, on a third line, if you had those two plus somebody who is, a streaky scorer, somebody who's just really good at finding the open spots along the net, that actually would be a ridiculously nice spot to have on a contending team if that was your third line behind a, Mark Scheifele second line.
Sounds like a bit of a redux of the old HBK line for the Pens, doesn't it?
Ooh, it does feel like that.
That being said, my biggest what if on this era over the retool will forever be a why we did not ever see Perfetti, Lowry, Connor, Ehlers, Scheifele, Vilardi. You wanted to get as much juice out of this, and we didn't ever see it. It will always be my what if.
Yep.
And I think you're seeing something really develop there where Cole Perfetti, and I thought Adam Lowry, this was one of his more involved games. He starts it off early with that big hit that leads to some chances. I think he's come out, and as this season's gone along, I think he's gotten stronger. Now we're talking about the idea of in a Stanley Cup world that is a third line, and it kind of reiterates where this roster is. But I do think you're seeing some good things there where I'm not as, again, I'm here for experimentation, but I'm not as like Barron needs to play on that group because Lowry's not good enough, because I actually think there's something there with Lowry and Perfetti. But again, I'm willing to see anything down the stretch here that's different from what we've seen through 67 games here.
Yeah, we've only been able to see it in small doses in the past, but anytime we've had a little bit of Lowry Connor, a little bit of Lowry and Ehlers, you can see that Lowry with the right type of, especially speedy offensive line mate, can actually support, right? He can actually be a real kind of option for them, especially, like you said, in a third line where the competition isn't going to be as harsh. You can win those minutes, you can win those matchups if you just give him those type of line mates and the opportunity to do those things. I think what is going to kind of stop that ever really from happening is the fact that the Jets have him, pinned into this, you are only to play with grinders, you need to only be, they look at it as a shutdown. The first plan always this season, don't forget, the first plan was for Jonathan Taves to be your second line offensive center. And because they viewed Adam Lowry, again, still only wanting to be that grinder in that role with those type of guys and those type of minutes. So, but I agree with you. If you could give him, you give him the Perfetti to keep running, a little bit of space with, give him Rosane, give him a Connor, give him somebody like that. There could be something there.
Hey, maybe that's Rosane here down the stretch.
That would be cool. Like to see that I would like to see that as well.
Some thoughts on the convo we're having over in the chat. Choices TK says, sounds like someone you might have just traded for.
Yep.
With Isak Rosane, maybe being that speedy winger that could add some shooting talent to Perfetti and Lowry. Still a trio I'd like to see down the stretch at some point here. Blake G says, Lowry and Perfetti with a bunch of question marks and exclamation marks. Who would have thought? Now imagine adding a fast, skilled play-driving winger. Arneal finally found it, but he was a year too late. He still hasn't found it yet.
Yeah, no, he has not.
Ferguson says, Barron has great speed and size, but Barron has no offensive IQ whatsoever. Not opposed to trying it, but I have a hard time seeing him produce much more than he does on the fourth line. One play I didn't think he had in his book he pulls out today. I thought the Jets did a really good job at 6-on-5 on the delayed power plays, getting themselves set up.
Absolutely.
And we see Barron go cross-ice to Kyle Connor, where he rings one off the bar. Didn't think he had that in his book, but he pulled that out. Gabe Vilardi had a quote I wanted to touch on here. He was asked post-game about his role in this lineup and how when that top group, who again, F5, got attempts don't go their way, but I thought they were more dangerous with their looks than Nashville. Kyle Connor somehow gets 3 assists today. All secondaries, though the first one, I did like the forecheck. But Gabe Vilardi's asked post-game about how he's able to adapt to the different lines so seamlessly. When he gets back on the top unit today, that's when we see him get in on that forecheck with Kyle Connor, sets up Josh Morrissey. They go up 1-0 on their 5-on-5 minutes there. Gabe Vilardi, I thought you saw his impact on display, draws 2 penalties, and shout out to Connor Hrabchak. This year, he's drawn the most penalties of his career, and you can see why with how effective he is net front. Though one of them happens in the neutral zone, he is so good at protecting the puck with his body to draw those holds and those trips that he gets 2 of them today. But Gabe Vilardi was asked about this, and where was it here? One of his quotes stood out to me, and maybe it's just because I look at it a certain way. But when he was asked about adjusting to different lines mid-game and like the different roles, he kind of was talking about the different roles with Lowry, how, you know, it's more defensive zone, face-offs, you're going to play against the best players on the other team. With Scheifele's line, it's more O-zone looks, and you got to produce. But then he says in there, you know what? I have high expectations of myself and believe I could produce at 5-on-5. I think that's the type of attitude I like to hear. That's the type of attitude I hope rubs off on a couple others in the dressing room. What'd you think of that from Gabe Vilardi? And what'd you think of his night tonight, where I thought he was real good? He was real impactful in this one.
Yeah, he was really good tonight. He was noticeable in all the right ways on the ice and continues to be noticeable in the right ways off the ice as well. We talked about his opening up during the, that interview that he did the other day. And this one in the post game, yeah, I really like that as well. It almost feels maybe a bit of a message going out to some of the other players. We heard Barron maybe also give a bit of a message to the locker room during in between periods of the other game. There might be some of the, I want to say high compete guys in the locker room, maybe a little frustrated with the way things are going on. And I like the way that they've, haven't thrown anybody under the bus by name, which, to be honest, I'm actually for, but I know hockey people get all their panties in a bunch about it. We've seen that this year, even when guys don't even use names like Zane Perek did. So I'm actually fine with calling out your teammates, but I know that's like a no-no in the NHL world. So, yeah, I kind of like the maybe a hidden shot a little bit or just a frustration, but I liked it. I like that he still cares, right? At this point in the season, he's still, competing.
To be fair, I don't think it's a shot. I just think it's his personal mantra of him trying to be the best version of himself.
True. He doesn't have that in him. Me, that's right.
Yeah. For me, it's like you hear that and you're like, what about the top 2 guys of this lineup? Let's get into From Financial Faceoff. What did you think was the difference in this game? What tipped the scales? Not a great out-of-town scoreboard tonight, I got to say. But let's get into From Financial Faceoff. On the other side of it, I want to get into a bit of a podcast from the Athletic Hockey Show today. I want to see what people have to think of something. And then I also would like to get into a prospect where if we are drafting a little lower than I wanted, might not be a bad thing. We'll see. Let's get into the From Financial Faceoff here.
Let's hit it.
Thanks for calling the landing strip. You're on the air. What would you like to talk about?
Right on. 1-204-800-0409. 1-204-800-0409. Get on the line. Give us a call. Let us know you're from Financial Faceoff or anything else you want to talk about.
I'll let you begin, buddy. What is your From Financial Faceoff between the Nashville Predators and the Winnipeg Jets?
My From Financial Faceoff is the reason why this person wasn't my Tank Commander award, because it's UC Saros. He was the pure reason that the Nashville Predators won. And you know what? Before we get into UC Saros, real quick, so can somebody remind me what the story from the Avalanche game was? Just real fast, right? It was that the Jets put in a gutsy effort, which in the NHL means that you got outshot, outchanced, and outplayed badly. Then they won on the back of a stellar performance from Connor Hellebuck, right? And
Yep.
that means that the Jets, I was told that means the Jets are playoff ready, that they're good enough, and that what really matters only is that the 2 points. Not that Colorado carried the play for the majority of the game, just that the 2 points, right? So what happened today? Should we be praising Nashville then, I guess, as playoff ready, as gutsy, as they put in a tough effort against a team that carried the play but still somehow won on the back of a stellar goalie? That's kind of weird.
So what you're saying is this was a makeup result.
Yeah.
From the Colorado game here.
100%. It was, the Jets, they had more shots, they had more chances. Overall, they would have, won that game on any other night, but UC Saros went absolute God mode and, gave Nashville the win. So it's got to be Saros for me.
A couple in the chat. Doug Henderson's From Financial Faceoff is Saros. Rylan Medwick's From Financial Faceoff is Saros. Rihanna's From Financial Faceoff is Saros. He was leaps better than Helly came off as. Hard to argue with any of that. A few more. Real DFV's From Financial Faceoff. A fine lad named O'Reilly scoring in the shootout on St. Paddy's Day. And I'll say if they end up winning this game in regulation, his stick lift on Scheifele coming down the pipe with about 5 minutes left in the third was in play for me here.
Yeah.
You get, as Blake G goes there, From Financial Faceoff, is Old Man Taze turning back the clock and getting the Jets the loser point. He gets out there for the draw, wins it. Mark Scheifele finds him. He buries. That is a bit of a From Financial Faceoff here, where we go from a 4-point swing and really trailing Nashville to only a one-pointer like that from Blake G. Colin Hall's From Financial Faceoff is Elias Solomonson is here, folks. Make preparations as necessary. And Jets Empire was Juice. And then in brackets, Saros.
Yep.
For me, this was the most stress-watched game I've had all year. From Financial Faceoff was Nashville getting the extra point. That's all that mattered here for me, was as long as Nashville got to OT and we didn't lose, I guess we would have technically passed them, but we did not lose standings position here. And that was on the back of UC Saros tilting the scales and being the much better goaltender tonight. The Winnipeg Jets sticking in their spot, 6th last as it stands right now. But we got to start cheering against Florida now, who's sneaking up on us.
Yeah.
That is my From Financial Faceoff. And Rain gets one in here late saying the From Financial Faceoff was Saros, was special. Sole reason they walked away with the win. Hard to disagree with any of those on this night.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So, as you know, I tend to listen to a lot of stuff out of market. And one of my frustrations this year has been how hard a lot of the Canadian franchises are on their shitty teams compared to us. And I found this interesting. So I'm going to read some stuff out to you here. Give me a second here. And I'm curious what you would think of these thoughts. So, first quote. First of all, let's be clear when we talk about the Winnipeg Jets. Any conversations about what big, bold, brave decisions they should make are theoretical conversations. It's a nice hypothetical. The reality is, as you said, this team's been at a fork in the road for years now. They always choose the same path, which is the path of least resistance. What's easiest? What's going to involve the least amount of work for the front office? What is the one thing that we could do that isn't much of anything, but we could kind of sell as it is something? Then everyone puts their feet on their desk, hangs a mission accomplished banner, waits for results to change, and of course they never do. How's that sound so far? Does that sound like the Winnipeg Jets?
Spot on so far.
Look, should this team be open to making a big move, even involving a Kyle Connor, a Mark Scheifele, a Josh Morrissey, or a Connor Hellebuyck? Yes, they should be open to that. They should be willing to have some tough conversations around it. That should be the start of the discussions, not the end of it. They should absolutely be open to moving everybody. When you look at the contracts for next year, everyone else is under contract. If you're going to make big changes, they're going to be just kind of the one. They aren't going to be just the ones that are right in front of you. It's going to have to be bold moves trades, something in order to change, because it's not going to be easy the way contracts are set up. Does that kind of sound like a lot of the conversations we've been having over here about the Winnipeg Jets?
On this show, yeah, that's those are actually some really great criticisms. Who wrote that about the Winnipeg Jets?
We'll get there. We'll get there. It
man,
just
this is
sounds
wonderful.
Like it fits the Jets, right?
Perfectly so far. This is a great article.
The easy way is to sit back and wait for maybe you get a phone call from Connor Hellebuyck next summer saying, I want to be a Florida Panther or Vegas Golden Knight, and do you try and trade him for 25 cents on the dollar when he picks his destination? The tough way to do it is to sit down one of those franchise players, insert any of the core four, down, and I say, I know you have years left on your contract. We're going to move you. Give us a list. Is anyone in the NHL allowed to say, my job's hard, so I'm not going to try? I don't think nobody other than GMs are allowed to do that. I certainly know nobody on this roster wouldn't be allowed to do that. If Kyle Connor comes out and says, I know I didn't play well, but it's hard. It's hard to score goals, so I just didn't. He'd be ripped 10 ways from Sunday, and rightfully so. I don't see why Cheveldayoff or whoever it is gets an easy pass. Sound like the Winnipeg Jets so far?
Scathing.
There's a couple scenarios how this plays out. Either Chevy is somehow going to work a Jedi mind trick on Chipman and keep his job, which tells us everything we need to know about how broken this organization is on the inside. This team doesn't have a year. They don't even have this year. They have got to make some hard decisions very quickly. Doing it the easy way has not worked. Let's just say it. Until the deadline, Chevy hadn't made a single trade. Madness. Right there. Priority number one. The GM doesn't get to take 2 months off in the summer. I'm sorry. The GM doesn't get to take the whole first half if things go badly. What do you think of those thoughts?
They're dead on.
Sound
that
like
is
some of what we're talking about with the Winnipeg Jets.
That is absolutely perfectly encapsulating what's going on with the Jets, with the conversations that we've been trying to have here. Whoever wrote it must be a listener of our show, because that's the conversations that we have with our really our great group of community here. So, yeah, that's who wrote that about the Jets. That's incredible.
So, it wasn't about the Jets.
What?
I just inserted the Jets. That was a conversation about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And inserting their franchise players into that conversation, inserting Brad Treliving into that conversation, inserting their president into that conversation. Those are the type of conversations that are happening around the Toronto Maple Leafs for the type of dive we've seen the Winnipeg Jets take. And I just find it ironic how much all of those quotes seamlessly fit into Winnipeg, and yet no one here, not no, a lot of the market here doesn't want to have those conversations for a big league team. Pretty crazy when you think about it, no?
It's kind of sad that we're envious of how the Leafs are being treated and covered. I never thought that would be a thing that I'd have to say, but man, why can't we have accountability like the Toronto Maple Leafs? That's weird. I don't like it. This is bad.
As the chat says, Jets Empire says, Nik playing Jedi mind tricks himself, and Blake G saying, I freaking knew it. I'm just saying, when you compare the situations and you start to insert the blanks, you start to see a lot of the same conversations that are prevalent elsewhere to probably be a lot louder locally in Winnipeg and via the national media when it comes to the Winnipeg Jets. The fact that you could sit there and listen to that and truly believe that was about the Winnipeg Jets and it was a scathing, honest take is telling.
Yeah, those are the conversations we should be having. Those are the questions we kind of should be asking. I don't know why we always stop the conversation at, he's got the hardest job in the NHL. And then we never go any step past that. We never wonder then, okay, then what are the things he's doing to get around that? What are the creative ways he's finding to, make his job better, to find, make this successful? You can't just say it's hard and then not try, right? That's the big crux in that article that gets kind of buried, is you can't just say, yeah, this is, oh, well, we can't do it. If the players said that, they would be chased out of town. It's kind of crazy that we let that as the excuse, the catch-all, the whole reason of just like, well, oh, well, he can't do anything about it. Do we think nobody could do anything? Like, is it really that insanely impossible that nobody could do any job whatsoever better? And if you even suggest ways of doing that, you're told that it's not fantasy hockey and that it's a good thing fans don't run teams, even though we're told the biggest fan owns the team and is consulted daily on hockey operations. But that's neither here nor there.
How many owners at the NHL draft do you see right next to the GM? Colin Hall is in our
some
chat.
bad ones.
And he replied to the thread earlier, and I wanted to point out because he did some digging on some of the numbers behind what we're talking about. And Hall said, you know, it's insane. That nice little spot provided harsh but correct critique about how, despite watching it all fall down around him, Trey Living went 8 months without making a move, and how it speaks to the lack of effort from the front office. Before the Winnipeg Jets traded Logan Stanley and Luke Shen, a trade that only came to pass by GM Kevin Cheveldayoff's own words, Jarmo made it happen. The last trade that was made 1 year and 1 day prior for the same player they traded, Luke Shen. Before the trade deadline last year, the 2024 deadline, they have not made a singular move for an actual NHL player outside of the deadline, and very specifically the deadline was the player force PLD trade in 2023. So if Trey Living isn't doing his job, what is Chevy doing? When you start to, you know, the whole, we got to get away from the, it's too hard when this is the bare minimum expected of a GM. And to conclude on that, Hall also said, if you exclude the deadline acquisitions, the last NHL player trade they made was in 2021, half a decade prior. Our GM is quite literally taking 12 months off, wakes up at the start of March, does some business sometimes, then hibernates again. When you start to compare how things are covered, I don't think I'm crazy to be pointing this stuff out, and it's a real problem with when you look at the direction this thing's heading.
Yeah, 100%. Again, you gotta love that both Chevy and Arneal, they must be a match made in heaven, because anytime they try to do or start getting credit for something, they come out themselves and let you know that they don't deserve it and that's not what happened. We were real ready to start praising Chevy on the Stanley trade. Man, they did the hard thing. They were smart about it. They found a great deal. Even we were ready to give him the flowers for it. And then he comes out at the press conference to let us know that Jarmo made that happen. It fell into his lap. Those are his words. It's not that you can listen to him tell us this. So it's hilarious that when they are active and trying to do, something to make the team better, you get Jonathan Taven and Gustav Nyquist and Luke Shen. And then when things kind of fall into their lap, they get lucky sometimes, which is great. But it's a little bit frustrating that he can get all of the benefit from the things that fall into his lap while being able to shed all of the negative criticism under the guise of, well, it's hard.
Hey, don't worry. Ryan Thiessen lets us know. The guys at Jets at Noon said in 2 years Barlow will save us, so don't worry, guys, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Barlow ain't saving anybody.
Yeah, but have they, Ryan Thiessen, have you considered that Chaz Lucius is still retired? So checkmate, we're out for another 10 years.
So I do want to talk some prospects today, though, because there's one that's starting to get me excited, especially if we do fall a little bit here. As of today, 7% chance of the playoffs, thanks to HockeyStats.com, projecting an 83-point finish, which would be the sixth lowest, where we're currently projected at right now, would be 2 points ahead of St. Louis, so hopefully something happens there for the Blues. Maybe they go on a bit of a run. The Rangers, Toronto, around there too, so we want them to win. We want the Devils to win and Florida to win. But I've made it clear at center, I'm more of a Malhotra guy than a Tynan Lawrence guy. I gotta say, there's one center that I think falls a little bit, and the more I've dove into him, and I have a couple in the community that keep sending me the propaganda, but seeing what I'm seeing now, I'm going to try and watch some of his games this week now that his playoffs have started. There might be another center bet in this top 10 of the draft to make.
We're gonna need a few of those because it's I'm always worried that we're gonna end up in like 8th or 9th picking a spot there. So I'm glad that you've got your eyes on somebody here.
Yes, and the chat's nailing it. Choices TK says Vigio. Rylan Medwick says Vigio. This is an interesting one. This might be the bet of the top 10 here. Vigio Bork fits the Winnipeg thing.
Yep.
Small center, playing number 1C for arguably the best team in the SHL. They have their first playoff game today. 23 minutes plus, 3 points, a point on all the goals for the team. And what's remarkable about what he's doing in the Swedish Pro League is he's doing this as a 5'8", 5'9" center. And we talked about the Cole Perfetti bet. And if you're taking a small center with this org, I don't think it's for the best. Where this gets interesting, when you look at his development from a micro stats angle, from 16, he was a really good defensive player, and the offense wasn't there at all. Now he's showing as a complete game player, high-end offense, high-end defense in the Swedish Pro League. As Colin says, I've come around a lot on Vigio. The problem is he's 5'8". The org will make him a winger 100%. Here's where the bet gets interesting. His brother's 6 foot and his dad's 6'2". Is there a late growth spurt there when you look at what he's doing currently in pro at his size? This is where teams would have a lot better knowledge on the players come combine day and whatnot. But if you were to get a 6 foot to 6'2" version of what he's doing in the Swedish Pro League, fascinating bet in the top 10 here when you look at the genetic pool and what he's doing at his size in pro hockey. I would want to avoid the centers and the lack of size, but when you start looking at his family, there might be a growth spurt there, and that's what's so interesting about this. I had one person suggest at the top end, they see Braden Point. At the low end, they see Yanni Gord. If he gets that growth spurt, man, this is a fascinating center bet. In a draft that, outside Malhotra, there's no real center that gets me excited in that top 10.
You've fallen out on Tynan Lawrence?
Second half's just not doing it for me.
Not doing it for you?
You jump up to college, and it's not popping.
Yep.
Compared to doing this in pro in Sweden, and we got the Winnipeg thing going.
Yep. Hey, if we need to send Vigio out to where they did Messi's growth work, right? We can get him moving. You know what I mean? That's we can pump him full of so many hormones and things. We can grow a 6 foot player out of him. I would have that same worry that the chat has, that knowing the Jets and the way that they view size over everything right now with this current administration, that they'd end up just moving him to the wing regardless if the spurt happens in a season or two. That seems to kind of be their tendency. So I like the idea, especially if we're going to be, stuck drafting in that double-digit-ish space, to find a guy like this who, might be the kind of diamond in the rough. I just worry about that size with the Jets and how they value things. But I would love to see a shot like that taken. His
jump from 16 to 17, just from a numbers perspective, and looking at the underlying data, is crazy to see. It's one of those like high rises where you start to bet on the ceiling a little bit. As Rylan Medwick says, he just screams on falling based on his size. Marco Rossi, same argument, and has a real high ceiling. And then Colin Hall also points out, Nick, you wouldn't expect Bjork to be the best forechecker in this draft, but boy howdy. And from a small guy, that's a great trait to have. You want some dogs? If he hits that growth spurt, I'm just saying, this is the name I think it's the most interesting in the top 10 to see what happens with him when you look at the pure upside, especially if he hits that growth spurt and what he's doing already at his size in a pro men's league. 1C, he's trusted as the 1C in Swedish Pro for one of the best teams. 23 minutes plus, 3-point night in his first playoff game. I wonder if he goes on a heater here, if that fall doesn't come, because you start doing it in impact games like this. Something to think about.
Absolutely. It's funny that Colby Barlow was just brought up a few seconds ago, because he's kind of the inverse of that, right? He was the bigger kid that was, just kind of developed early, bigger than the other guys, and kind of made himself stand out that way for the Jets. And now you've got, somebody that we're kind of keeping an eye on here who maybe right now compared to his peers is a little bit smaller, but the jump in terms of his skill set is really noticeable. That's one to keep an eye on. I like that.
And lastly, Colin Hall says, now I will say Lawrence still probably will be worth it. He's not the only guy to struggle starting out in college, and he closed out really strong. As we get closer, as long as we get into this top 7, I think I'm happy. You could sell me on what I'm starting to see from this prospect group in the top 7, and we're still in that positioning right now.
Give me number 6 like we got last time. You've got me feeling good about that spot, how we won the lottery from the 6th place last time. I'd be okay if we can get into 6 as long as we don't fall. I don't want to fall back any farther than 6. You know, if we finish 4 or 5 and we have to move back 1, okay, but like nothing lower than 6.
That is the ideal range for me, seeing what I'm seeing so far out of this group. I'm going to try, like I said, I'm going to try and watch some of the full games from the SHL and his playoffs, but the more and more info I'm being sent on Visual Bjork, some of the smaller videos on YouTube I'm seeing, I'm starting to get a little excited about that name if we're drafting a little lower than what we expected.
And also, how sick would a Bjork Jets jersey go?
Oh, yeah.
Right? That shit would be good.
Keep going for the Swedes, man.
Yeah.
And
on
that topic,
let's do it.
On that topic, 9th hardest strength of schedule remaining. 2 games against Colorado, 1 against Dallas, 1 against Pittsburgh, 1 against Columbus, 1 is Boston, listed as the toughest opponents over on Tankathon. Seattle, 14th hardest. New Jersey, 13th. Those are a little tighter than I'd like to see. Toronto, 17. Chicago, 18. Rangers, 19. Nashville, 23rd. There's a gap there. Florida, 24th. St. Louis, 25th. Schedule appears to be on our side for our hopes here. Let's get in to the tank. Well, let's get into the 3 stars and then do a tank sim on the way out here.
Right on. Let's hit it.
3 stars, who you got?
Right on.
Lastly, on the prospect stuff, and we're going to get Colin to call in down the stretch. I know he puts a ton of time into prospects. Says there's 5 or so forwards and 2 D, Nick. His list being McKenna, Stenberg, Malhotra, Lawrence, Bjork, Novotny, Klepov, Savanto, and Reeder Smits on D. Notably absent, Verhoff from the D list.
Not vibing for Verhoff. Interesting.
I wonder what he thinks of Daxton Rudolph. Hey, Colin, we'll set something up. We'll talk the positions and the breakdowns here. And Choices TK points out Sweden couldn't play him enough in the World Juniors. He was all over the boards for all the toughest minutes. He was a big part of that Swedish World Junior team. And also from Choices, Albert Smits would be nice to land as well. I do think he's jumping right into the NHL next year.
Yeah.
I don't want a left-handed D, but he does really interest me when you look at what he profiles like.
Yep.
I think he's going to play a long time in the NHL. A long time, maybe as early as next year.
And depending where the Jets end up drafting, if he falls a little bit to you there, you kind of just have to take him because, like you said, he's going to be able to jump right in.
It makes the left-handed D combo pretty interesting going forward.
Yep.
Who are your 3 stars? As I see Rihanna got hers in Saros, Sandberg, Taves.
Ooh.
Who are your 3 stars tonight?
At number 3, I'm going to go with Good Luck Gabe Vilardi. We talked a lot about him tonight. Game on the ice was noticeable, scoring goals, great comments afterwards. 2nd star, give me the entire pairing of Salo Sandberg. They continue to progress. Salo's game keeps growing, and I just really like the chemistry that they've developed. They were your most played pairing again today at 5-on-5. And number 1 star, not only for his play on the ice, but his contributions to the Winnipeg Jets, hopefully tanking and getting that draft pick. It's got to be the juice, UC Saros, doing it for both sides here.
3 stars from Real DFV. Saros, Morrissey, Vilardi. I'm going to go 3rd star. I'll go Gabe. Macarena, man, draws 2 penalties, has that goal, showed his value. He's such a unique player. His skill set and what he is really good at and the areas he's good at controlling is so fun to watch. I'll go Gabe Vilardi. Number 2, praised him a lot earlier. Brought up some Jacob Slavin comparisons. This was one of the most fun times I've had watching Dylan Sandberg on his ascent with the Winnipeg Jets. So I'll go Dylan Sandberg, number 2. And number 1, I don't think there's any doubt. For me, it's UC Saros. Jets Empire goes Juice, Macarena Man, and Sandberg. Same 3. Let's get into a tank sim where tomorrow night we got a favorable schedule. Hope for some 3-point games here. The Devils head into Madison Square Garden versus the Rangers. I'll take a Rangers OT win. I think would be my preference there.
Yep.
And then we also got Calgary St. Louis. I'll take a Blues OT win there, I think.
Yes, agreed.
Those would be the ideal spots, I think.
Yep.
Jockeying for position here.
Give me extra hockey tomorrow, baby.
Let's go. We'll be locked in. We'll be watching those scoreboards. Let's get into the tank sim before we get on with our night. Where are we drafting tonight?
Let's hit it. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Winnipeg Jets move up to number 2, right behind the Toronto Maple Leafs at number 1. Jordan Voth will be very happy to hear his Leafs are drafting number 1 with the Jets right at number 2.
Rob Mahoney gets in late here. Probably fair. Someone has to give KFC at least some top 3 love. 7 shots, 3 assists. He's just not my player, man. But yeah, hard to ignore that.
Yeah, that's, if you don't like KFC, that's a tough 3-point night of, second assist. You can have that argument really either way with his game tonight.
Toronto. Who's Toronto going? McKenna or Stenberg?
Toronto takes McKenna for sure.
So they go McKenna. Who are you taking?
It's if Stenberg's still sitting there, yeah. I think if you're in 1 or 2, you're happy with whichever guy falls to you there. I don't think there's right now. I don't think there's a bad choice between the two. I'd still rather McKenna, just again, like you talked about. I think he'll just kind of fit in. He'll look good at the Palomino on a Friday night, breaking jaws and breaking hearts. So that's still the preference, but real happy with Stenberg if we're at number 2.
The toughest thing for me with Gavin McKenna is, do you have too much of the high-end skill that doesn't get to the net in Connor, Scheifele, and McKenna?
Oh, man.
But he is so good at creating offensive looks, and you need that high-end offensive player.
They'll get hemmed in for the majority of their minutes every night, but all 3 of them will have 4 points. It'll be great.
It'll be pretty sick.
And I'm here for it. I'm here for it at this point.
I think Turd Ferguson nails this. It says T.O., Mago, Keaton, Veroff. They need a D so bad. If Brad Treliving's there, I wouldn't rule it out. With how much that market's talking about, they'd have to try to
trade back though. There's no way you can take one of those D in that 1 or 2 in that number 1 spot. Pack your bags at that point, Brad.
Brad, if he's there, I wouldn't surprise me.
That's such a bad move if he does.
Colin Hall says Whitehorse to Winnipeg. Jets Empire says McKenna at the Pal in the Big 26. Let's hope for it.
Let's go.
Let's hope for those lottery ball wins. Yeah, I can get excited big time about a McKenna to Winnipeg. We will talk to you. When's the next game here? They're going
Thursday.
Out on the road. Thursday. Who do they got Thursday?
We've got Boston on Thursday.
We got the Boston Bruins Thursday as the Winnipeg Jets go back out on the road. 15 games left. I believe only 5 of them are at home.
Yep.
Hardest strength of schedule. Fuck, Nick. Hardest strength of schedule of the teams that we're watching remaining. 10 of 15 on the road. I think we're in a good spot here. Yep. I think we're in a good spot. We'll see on Thursday as the Winnipeg Jets go into Boston. We'll talk to you then. I hope everyone has a good rest of their week until then, and we'll see you then.
Right on. Good night, everybody.